Welcome back, guys, to Phoenix Wright Justice for All, where we've now decided or discovered that there was a costume within the guitar case. Yes, I'm still confused, but inside the guitar case was the Nickel Samurai, the hero's very own costume, which a certain Adrian Andrews used to sneak out of the place without her identity being obviously seen by the sound of it. Still doesn't explain no fingerprints though, if she got it inside, so she'd had to open it with fingerprints on it, so... What? Mr. Wright, explain yourself! Right, are you saying that the witness opened the guitar case to take out a costume? What insane point would there be to doing something like that? That insane point would be to wear the costume, of course. Miss Andrews put it on to hide her identity so she could make her escape. After all, you couldn't let anyone see you leave, could you, Miss Andrews? I refuse to accept your theory. Do you have anything to support such a preposterous idea? Just outside the door was an investigative photographer, or protographer, who was starving for a big scoop. And in the end, she managed to get this shot correct. You mean this photo? Order! It looks like we've wandered into quite another mess again, haven't we? Nice job, Phoenix. Well, you know my strategy. Speak first, think later. So the real murderer was hiding inside a costume. Objection! Wait 1 second, Your Honor. The Nickel Samurai's costume would have been Mr. Matt Engarde's. Why would something of the defendants be in the victim's room? And inside the guitar case of all places? Indeed. True. That is a little baffling. Mr. Wright, the court would like to hear your thoughts. What was this Nickel Samurai costume doing inside the guitar case? It was stolen from Engarde, but wasn't he sleeping in it? And it was a spare costume is entirely feasible. One, cosplaying exists, of course. People make amazing costumes all the time. Two, there's most likely spares around if you're going to do a big event. If one breaks or rips, you kind of need another, don't you? Unless you've got loads of tailors at hand, of course. A spare costume is the postulation. Mr. Engarde did not take his costume off during the break period. In that case, the costume we were talking about was a spare one. What? Then are you saying that on the night of the murder, there were 2 Nickel Samurai costumes at the Gatewater Hotel? Yes, that is what I am saying. And how do you explain the costume that was inside the guitar case? It would mean that the victim himself had brought this spare to the ceremony on purpose. But why? The victim, Mr. Kurita, was the jamming ninja. Why would he secretly bring the Nickel Samurai's spare costume with him? What could be the reason behind such a peculiar act? And therein lies the sticking point. Objection! What are you mumbling to yourself about now? Have you just been rambling all this time without any sense of inner monologue? Huh? No, I just... Mr. Wright, please explain yourself. Why do you think the victim had the Nickel Samurai's spare costume? Phoenix, are you sure you can explain this one? Think carefully before you answer, and then answer with gusto. I believe in you. Alright, this is what I think. The reason the victim brought the Nickel Samurai's spare costume to the hotel was... Oh, we have to present a reason? I'd say it's that, personally, just because of the fact that something was happening and Matt Engarde said, no, I had no clue I was doing anything like that. It's kind of why he went to sleep, I guess. Take that! Someone had come to sabotage something, but the music still keeps going. What is this? On the night of the murder, after the stage show, the Nickel Samurai was going to hold a special press conference. A press conference? Yes, the Nickel Samurai was supposed to confess something at this conference. I heard about this as well. But once you're not making something up, right? But what struck me as strange was that Mr. Engarde himself said he had no idea he was supposed to be holding a press conference that night. But how can that be? The way I see it, that can mean only one thing. The conference was set up by none other than the victim, Mr. Juan Colida himself. The victim? Yes. The spare nickel samurai costume was prepared for that very conference. Mr. Corrida was going to hold the press conference as the Nickel Samurai. He was going to dress up as the Nickel Samurai and hold a conference? But why would the victim do such a thing? That's something I don't quite know yet. However, what I am concerned with right now is what he intended to reveal at that conference. The Nickel Samurai was going to confess something. And by confess, I'd wager he was going to reveal something about himself. Which means that Juan Colida, posing as a Nickel Samurai, was going to speak about Matt Engarde. Yes, I guess that is what it would mean. But if that's the case, that's not a confession. That's public disclosure. Miss Andrews? I can see why you are pros at what you do. Pardon me? Yes, just as you say, the press conference was set up by Juan. How do you know about it? Miss Andrews, please offer us an explanation for this. I was the one he asked to help set it up. And the person who prepared the second costume for him. That was also me. You? Juan had bet everything on the Jamming Ninja this year. And if he lost the Grand Prix, he was going to make sure Matt was going down with him. That's what he thought anyway. He was going to ruin him, huh? It looked like somehow Juan had in his hands a secret so powerful that it would destroy Matt's acting career had it been revealed. What? And do you know what the secret of Mr. Engarde's is, Miss Andrews? That's something only Juan knew. I don't know what it is. Ah, I see. I've probably been coming off quite suspicious to everyone. But that's to be expected. I've been trying to protect Matt after all. Protect Mr. Engarde? And yet again another strange bit of truth comes to light, it seems. Miss Andrews, if you could, please tell us the truth about your behavior. Yes, Your Honor. I understand. Right then, another testimony has come our way, protecting Matt. From the moment I saw the crime scene, I had a feeling that Matt was the murderer. Matt had to kill Juan no matter what, and he didn't have an alibi for what he was doing at the time of the murder. My thoughts were confirmed by the evidence, of course, the button and the knife. But I'm Matt's manager, so I felt that I had to protect him.
This does account for everything.
Well, I am the logical type. We're finally seeing her true self. She's more nervous than a scared rabbit.
If the defense can find no fault with this testimony, I am ready to make a ruling at every possible time. Why? Please keep that in mind as you cross-examine Mr. Wright.
Looks like somehow everything has swung to the opposite end of the scale again. That just means I have to put my weight into this and turn the logic upside down. Fine then, let's get to work. Press, press, press. The moment I saw the crime scene, I had a feeling that Matt was the murderer. How? Would you say that was your intuition speaking to you? Don't confuse my methods of reasoning with your own.
Ah.
And if you want to prove that if someone did something, you need three things. Three things? A motive, an opportunity to commit the crime, and finally, decisive evidence. And if you think these three things through, the answer becomes quite clear. You should have already known that, Phoenix.
They didn't teach that to us in school. At least not from what I remember.
May I continue now? Matt had to kill Juan no matter what.
Or because Juan was going to reveal something? So would you say this need came from the press conference?
Yes. Do you know why Juan chose that event and that hotel for the conference?
because that was when he could cause the most damage to the public's beloved Matt Engarde.
And you knew of this plan, didn't you, Miss Andrews?
Yes, because I was the one who set up the conference to prepare the costume.
But I'm sure Mr. Engarde himself didn't know anything about the press conference.
Oh, really? Can you show me any proof that he didn't know about the press conference?
No, it's just all by written word, but you know, if it was written word, that'd be good. All by spoken word. Anyway, the important thing here is that this information was not in your testimony. Yes, I agree. Miss Andrews, please correct your testimony if you please.
Grasping at straws now, are we, Mr. Wright? I know what his motive was, but I don't have any way to prove I'm right.
Well, it's your same boat then. Has Mr. Engarde done something to hurt or betray you personally?
Why do you ask?
You were the one who helped Mr. Korea with his press conference. And that event was supposed to bring down Mr. Engarde, yet you still helped out. Objection! The person on trial right now is Mr. Engarde, right? And what the witness was thinking, helping the victim with his plan, is none of our concern. In any case, this means that the defendant had a motive to kill. Why do I keep doing this to myself?
He didn't have an alibi for what he was doing at the time of the murder.
He was asleep in his room. Doesn't really count. But didn't you already testify earlier that Mr. Engarde was taking a nap in his room? Are you telling me now that that too was a lie so you could cover for Mr. Engarde?
I'm not telling you anything of the sort. When I went to get him from the show, he honestly was sleeping. However, as to whether he was sleeping the entire time, that I cannot say. I was too busy setting up the stage at the time.
I keep trying, but I can find no flaws with what Miss Andrews has said. I can't say the same for some people here in this courtroom, however.
The judge is glaring straight at Mia. He's glaring at you, smart guy. My thoughts were confirmed by the evidence, of course. The button and the knife.
Hold it! You can hardly call the knife decisive evidence. The fingerprints on the knife could very well be a clever camouflage.
Then what about the button? The button? It's clear from the crime scene that the victim and his murderer fought. And during the fight, the killer ripped the button from the jamming ninja's costume.
You're talking about this button, correct?
That button was found in the pleats of Matt's Hakama, isn't that correct? I would think that makes it very decisive evidence.
Looks like you outfoxed it again, Mr. Wright. Anyway, the knife doesn't prove a thing. Please fix your testimony.
I can't stand the sight of a man who can't gracefully accept his defeat.
Thank goodness Mia can still look at me.
With an icy stare, yes.
Can the spirits hear thoughts? Miss Andrews, for Mr. Wright's sake, please add this information to your testimony.
Right, and the button was torn off of Juan during his fight with Matt. That wasn't much of a fight, anyway.
Let's press this one for the time being, but it wasn't much of a fight because someone got strangled and that was from behind. And how'd you know that?
And the ends of the threads on the button and the costume were matched up. They were found to fit together perfectly, or so I heard.
I've heard that before too.
Why would Miss Andrews know about this case down to such a fine detail? Don't look at me like that, just because I'm prepared and you are not.
And I thought I had her for sure this time. If there's anything to trip her up on, it has to be here. But where and what? Well, even the game's confirming it for me now. So yes, it's here. There was no fight, is more the point here. It's basically that. So that's why I've come back to this thing here, because there wasn't a head-to-head fight. There didn't need to be anything that involved ripping things off, because it was entirely from behind. The blood was the framing part, of course, the stabby knife, because, you know, that's the framing point. It didn't happen at the time. All he had to do was strangle him and walk off. He didn't have to stab and leave his fingerprints there. And if he was... This is stupid. It's this. It's got to be this. Objection! This is the victim's autopsy report. A button wouldn't fall into his Hakama when he was behind him. It clearly states that the cause of death was strangulation by a scarf. Strangulation? The knife stab to the victim was done after the victim had already died. There wasn't a fight involved. Might be some flailing.
And what does that mean?
Let's examine the evidence. This button has the victim's blood on it, which would mean that it was ripped off of the costume. When? After the knife was stabbed into the victim. Exactly. Which means it is impossible that this button was torn off during the victim's final struggle, because the victim was strangled to death in that fight. That's right, Miss Andrews. There is no way this button was ripped off during the struggle. This button was consciously pulled off of the victim's already dead body.
Order, order! What is the meaning?
What is the meaning of this, Wright? So what if the button was torn off the body after the victim had already died? What does that change? Let me ask you one simple question, Mr. Edgeworth. Why was the button torn off? What purpose did that serve? What purpose? We now know this button was not torn off during the fight, so the murderer took the time and effort to purposely rip this from the victim's body. And that would mean that the murderer had something in mind, wouldn't it?
Mr. Wright, does this mean? Does this mean you know what the murderer wanted to do with this button? What was it?
To have a memento of the crime. To pin the crime on Matt Engarde. There is only one logical reason for doing something like that. It was to pin the crime on Mr. Engarde. There is no way anyone would put a bloody button in their own pants. Yes, that's stupid. That's right, Mr. Engarde was set up, just like putting a knife with your fingerprints all over it into someone after the deed's done. By the real killer, of course. I'm literally going to have to point at you here, Adrian Andrews, aren't I? Because you're the only one we can prove was also on the scene.
And the real murderer is? Well, Mr. Wright, who in the world is the real killer then?
Finally. I can't believe I managed to bring this trial all the way up to this point. Phoenix, you can't let your guard down yet. Not until the very end. The real killer, the person who planned to frame Mr. Engarde, is... Take that! It's the only one it could be. Miss Adrian Andrews. Or at least within this courtroom anyway.
I choose you! You are Mr. Korea's killer!
What? My glasses! But... hope she's taking, like, all the buy one get one free offers and all that, because, man, her stress reaction is bad. In terms of monetary cost.
Order, order, order! Mr. Wright! This is a very grave matter. Do you have any evidence to support your charge?
Any evidence? All of the evidence points to Miss Andrews. Well, how preposterous! You can't stick any of that on me! I can't, can I? Would you care to test me? Then what about this knife? The knife was used to stab the victim after he had already been strangled to death. It was used to throw suspicion onto Mr. Engarde, naturally. A knife covered in the defendant's fingerprints could only be taken from his room. And the only one who had dinner with him and knew which knife to take was you. Oh, again? Then, what? What about the button that was found in Matt's Hakama? This button was removed from the victim's body after he had already died. The only people who could have done so were the person who found his body or the killer. However, if Mr. Engarde was the real killer, there was no way he would have put such incriminating evidence in his own Hakama. Oh, and that's the fourth bear, if I'm right in counting. The only person who could have put this button into Mr. Engarde's Hakama is the person who went to wake him from his nap, which is you yet again, Miss Andrews.
I see. What about the empty guitar case?
That is also another piece of evidence that incriminates Miss Andrews. That costume was used to hide the real killer's identity as they fled the crime scene. Now, who would have known that there was just such a costume inside the guitar case? It could only have been the person who prepared the costume for the victim. And that person is you. Miss Adrian Andrews.
No, I...
Objection!
But Miss Andrews' fingerprints were nowhere to be found on the guitar case. It was you who proved that she was not wearing gloves at the time.
That's right.
And that's because she did not intend on leaving any prints. If anyone had found out that she had touched the case, they would have asked her why. So to avoid leaving any prints, she used a towel or something else to open it. But the glass of tomato juice is a different story. She wanted people to, know she was on the scene, I guess? Or some kind of order. She knocked the vase over by accident still and then needed a plausible reason? I do not know. And we will continue down this logic train. I say logic loosely. Next time on Justice for All. Join me then. Bye-bye.